Ellie made an appointment with Hank, a registered dietitian, to find out more about her family history of cancer and the steps she can take to prevent risk factors for her children and generations to come. It is important to know your family health history. This is an important preventative measure you can choose to take to determine your risk for chronic disease. Ellie knows that cancer is common in her family, so she took a test to determine her risk and furthermore be proactive about her health. Why is it important to know if you are at risk? There are many factors that play a role in your health outcome. Some are not under your control, but some are. It includes the connection between your health, diet, and genes. This is a concept called nutrigenomics. Recent studies on this topic have shown that we may have more control of our health outcomes than we think. Environmental and dietary factors have shown to play a large role on our genes and our health. A gene is a very small unit of heredity, passed down from parent to offspring. Genes make us who we are. Different versions of genes are called alleles, which give us specific traits that we can also pass down. For example, Ellie has green eyes. She received this allele from her mother, who also has green eyes. And there is a chance that she can pass this gene variation on to her children. So how can we change our genes? Well, we cannot change our DNA, but we do have the power to turn our genes on or off. This is called epigenetics. It is the amount of gene that is activated or not activated that is based on your lifestyle factors and can be inherited or not inherited by offspring. We may not be able to change the outcomes of our children's eyes by diet and lifestyle, but there are factors we can change about our lifestyle and dietary habits that can benefit or hinder ourselves and our children. Some small changes in our DNA are called single nucleotide polymorphisms, or SNPs. They occur naturally in our genes. These can sometimes have no effect on us, but sometimes they can result in certain life-changing diseases or conditions. Nutrition is a factor that has shown to change the amount of gene that is expressed. In other words, every individual's genetic background is affected by their diet. For example, the risk of some cancers has shown to increase when associated with Western diet habits. The Western diet is described as high intakes of red meat, processed meat, prepackaged foods, butter, fried foods, high-fat dairy products, eggs, refined grains, potatoes, corn, and high-sugar drinks. Some of these foods have been linked back to dietary components that have the potential power to affect certain genes in the body, creating a transition of normal cells to cancerous cells. For example, a dietary component called heterocyclic amines is found in red and processed meats. There are certain genes that the ingestion of this compound can alter, causing a risk for developing cancer in the colon, breast, or other body sites. Evidence has shown that approximately 1 in 3 cancer deaths is associated with dietary factors. This may be due to not enough protective factors in the diet and exposure to carcinogens, which are substances that can cause cancer. What foods have carcinogens? There are carcinogenic properties in many different foods. Some you would not think. A carcinogen called nitrosamines is in food like fried potatoes, bacon, beer, some cheeses, and more. This carcinogen has been linked to causing cancerous properties in the nose, throat, and stomach. This is not to say that all carcinogens in all foods need to be completely avoided, but knowing your risk factors for certain diseases or conditions will help to tailor your diet to avoid only the carcinogens that have been shown to increase your risk for a specific condition. There are genes involved with cancer that can also interact with the diet. Scientists are working to discover particular essential and the non-essential nutrient components that can help resolve the relationship between different individuals' diet habits and possibility of cancer development. So how can Hank, as a registered dietitian, help Ellie? Well, upon assessing Ellie's diet and knowing her risk factors for cancer, he is able to work with Ellie to help her adopt diet changes based on her personal preferences, which can decrease her risk, her children's risk, and the risk for generations to come. What foods have protective factors? What would Hank, the registered dietitian, recommend that Ellie include in her diet? Hank would recommend foods that contain certain chemicals called polyphenols, sterols, flavonoids, and carotenoids. These can be found in foods such as fruits and vegetables, whole grains such as whole wheat bread, oatmeal, and brown rice, nuts, seeds such as sesame seeds, quinoa, and pumpkin seeds, legumes such as lentils, chickpeas, and peanuts, healthy fats such as avocado and olive oil, and some spices and seasonings. Some of the diet changes Ellie could be making would be as simple as swapping foods for healthier versions, like swapping excessive amounts of red meat for poultry and fish, or swapping refined grains for whole grains, such as brown rice instead of white rice, or choosing to have whole fruits instead of juices with added sugars. Doing so could alter Ellie's genes, allowing Ellie and the generations following Ellie to experience a decreased risk for developing certain cancers. And through the power of good nutrition, a cancer diagnosis could be completely cured or ignored. Now that Ellie has had an appointment with a registered dietitian to learn more about her family history of cancer, she understands that learning more about her family health history may help her to determine the necessary steps to take in order to decrease her risk of developing disease. Ellie learned that understanding the relationship between genes, environment, and diet could provide benefit to her, her children, and many generations to come. She learned that there are certain foods that contain certain chemicals that can decrease her risk of disease, and Ellie could easily incorporate these foods into her diet by swapping out certain foods for healthier alternatives. Hank worked with Ellie to educate her on foods that are beneficial to include in her diet based off of her genes. Hank was sure to inform Ellie about foods that contain polyphenols, sterols, flavonoids, and carotenoids. These chemicals can be found in fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, nuts, healthy fats, and spices. After hearing what Hank had to say, Ellie decided to switch out red meats for poultry, refined grains for whole grains, and white rice for brown rice. Ellie decided to make these changes after learning that her diet can alter her genes, allowing her and generations to come to have a decreased risk of cancer. And now, Ellie believes that through the power of good nutrition, a cancer diagnosis can be cured or completely ignored.